3 months after my wedding, I heard my husband tell someone that marrying me had been a mistake. Then he said the sentence I still wish I could erase from my memory. Dawn was my last resort. My name is Dawn Wiley. I'm 26 years old, and until that night, I genuinely believed my 24-year-old husband, James, loved me. We'd been together for years before getting married. We'd talked about houses, careers, children, even stupid little things like whether we'd eventually get a dog before having kids. Our marriage was only 3 months old, and I thought we were happy. Not perfect. Happy. That night, I wasn't snooping. I was walking past our bedroom when I heard James talking on the phone. His voice was low, the way it got whenever he was having one of those serious conversations with a close friend. I would have kept walking. Then I heard my name. "Don't settle for just anyone," James said. "That's the mistake I made with Dawn." I stopped. My hand was still resting against the hallway wall. Then came the sentence that changed everything. She was my last resort, and now look where it's gotten me. I couldn't move. For several seconds, I genuinely wondered whether I'd misunderstood him. Maybe I'd missed the beginning. Maybe there was context that would somehow make those words less cruel. But there wasn't much context that could save the phrase last resort. My first instinct was to walk into the bedroom, ask him what the hell he meant. Instead, I quietly stepped away. Maybe I was afraid he'd confirm it. That night, James behaved completely normally. He asked what I wanted to watch. He complained about something he'd seen online. Later, when we climbed into bed, he kissed my forehead. "Night, babe." I stared into the darkness. "Good night." He fell asleep beside me within minutes. I didn't sleep at all. Every memory suddenly felt contaminated. Our first vacation. His proposal. The way he'd cried during our wedding vows. Every "I love you." Had he meant any of it? Or had I simply been available when the woman he actually wanted wasn't? That thought came quietly at first. Then it wouldn't leave. Someone else. Was there someone before me? Someone James hadn't been able to have? By morning, I felt sick. James walked into the kitchen cheerful as ever and started scrolling through his phone while eating breakfast. I watched him more closely than I ever had before. His thumbs moved quickly. Type. Delete. Type again. Then a message appeared. His expression changed. Just slightly. A small smile. I hated myself for noticing. "Who are you texting?" His eyes lifted immediately, almost too quickly. "Oh, just a friend." "Which friend?" He gave a tiny shrug. "You don't know her." Her. One word. Probably meaningless. Except nothing felt meaningless anymore. I nodded and continued drinking my coffee. Later that afternoon, it happened again. James was sitting on the couch staring at his phone when that same soft smile appeared. Not laughter. Something warmer. "What's funny?" I asked. He immediately locked the screen. "Nothing. Just a meme." "A meme?" "Yeah." He kissed my cheek and walked toward the kitchen. I remained on the couch. For the first time since we'd married, I wondered whether my husband was hiding another woman from me. I didn't search his phone. I didn't follow him. I didn't ask again. But I started noticing everything. How often his phone stayed face down. How quickly he answered certain messages. How sometimes he'd leave the room to respond. Maybe those things had always happened. Maybe I had simply trusted him enough not to notice. For several days, I said nothing. It was torture. At night, James would sleep beside me while I stared at the ceiling, wondering whether I was lying next to someone who regretted choosing me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. One morning after breakfast, I put my coffee down. "James." He looked up. "We need to talk." Something in my voice made him stop scrolling. I walked into the living room. He followed me. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. "What happened?" he asked. I looked directly at him. "A few nights ago, I heard you talking on the phone." His expression changed. Barely. But I saw it. "You said marrying me was settling." Silence. "And you called me your last resort." His eyes widened. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then James gave a nervous little laugh. Wait, you heard that? That laugh hurt almost as much as the words. Yes. Dawn, I didn't mean it like that. How exactly am I supposed to interpret last resort? I was venting. About our marriage? He rubbed both hands over his face. It was stupid. I was stressed. People say things when they're frustrated. I stared at him. People don't accidentally describe their wife as their last resort. Dawn, do you believe you settled for me? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. And that silence told me more than every reassurance he'd given me since our wedding. James. He looked down. Answer me. His fingers tightened together. I don't know. My chest went cold. You don't know? I love you. That wasn't my question. I know. Then answer it. He finally looked at me. I don't know if getting married was the right decision. There it was. 3 months after standing in front of our families and promising forever, my husband couldn't tell me whether he wanted the life he'd chosen. He started talking faster. This isn't about you being bad or not enough. It's me. I thought getting married would make everything feel settled. Instead, sometimes I feel like maybe we rushed it. We were together for years. I know. You had plenty of time to decide. I know. Then why marry me? His eyes filled with tears. I thought I could make it work. I went completely still. Not, I wanted this. Not, I chose you. I thought I could make it work. And you didn't want to be alone, I said. He didn't respond. That was another answer. I stood and walked toward the window because suddenly I couldn't sit beside him. Behind me, James whispered, I never wanted to hurt you. I looked outside. Cars moved along the street. Someone walked a dog. A delivery truck stopped across from our building. Everything outside looked painfully normal. What do you want now? I don't know. I actually laughed once. Not because anything was funny, because those 3 words had apparently become the foundation of our marriage. I don't know. He wiped his eyes. Maybe I just need some time. To decide whether you want your wife? Dawn, please. No. I need to understand what you're asking me to do. Am I supposed to sit here while you decide whether marrying me was a mistake? That's not what I'm saying. It sounds exactly like what you're saying. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Neither of us moved. The screen lit briefly. I couldn't see the message. But I saw James glance at it. Quickly. Instinctively. Then he looked back at me. That tiny movement lodged itself in my mind. Maybe we need some space, he whispered. I stared at the man I'd married 3 months earlier. For days, I'd been terrified of losing James. Standing there, something inside me shifted. Because suddenly I realized there was something worse than losing my husband. It was spending the rest of my life auditioning to remain his choice. That night, we slept in the same bed with nearly 3 feet between us. James faced the wall. I stared at the ceiling. His phone was charging on the nightstand. At 12:17 a.m., the screen illuminated. A message. I didn't reach for it. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, I wasn't wondering how to convince James that our marriage was worth saving. I was wondering why I was fighting so hard for a man who couldn't even decide whether he wanted me, and by morning, I knew I wasn't going to wait forever for his answer. By morning, I had made one decision. I was done waiting for James to decide whether I was good enough to keep. He was already awake when I walked into the kitchen, standing by the counter with his coffee, scrolling through his phone like the night before hadn't happened. I watched him for a few seconds. Then I said, "We need to finish this conversation." James looked up. His face immediately tightened. "Dawn, I don't know what else you want me to say. I want a decision." He put his phone down. "I told you I need time. And I told you I can't live in a marriage where my husband needs time to figure out whether he wants me." He looked exhausted. So was I. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then James sighed. "I don't want to lose you." That should have meant something. But all I heard was what he didn't say. He didn't say he chose me. He didn't say he wanted our marriage. He said he didn't want to lose me. There was a difference. James, that's not enough. His eyes filled. What are you saying? I swallowed hard. I think we should separate. He stared at me. Seriously? Yes. After one conversation? I almost laughed. This isn't about one conversation. It's about finding out my husband married me while wondering if he'd made a mistake. That isn't fair. No. What's unfair is asking me to stay here while you decide if there's something better waiting for you. James stood up, pacing once across the kitchen. Dawn, you're making this sound worse than it is. Then tell me I'm wrong. He stopped. I waited. Again. Silence. That was when I knew. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just nodded. Okay. That scared him more than yelling would have. What does that mean? It means I'm done asking. The next few days were painful in the quietest way. We started dividing things: clothes, furniture, wedding gifts that suddenly looked ridiculous sitting around our apartment. James packed a suitcase and moved temporarily into a friend's place while we figured out the rest. On his last night there, he stood in the bedroom doorway while I folded clothes into a box. Dawn. I looked up. He hesitated. I really did love you. Did. Past tense. Maybe he didn't even realize he'd said it that way. I did. I believe you, I said. He looked surprised. But love shouldn't feel like someone keeping me around because they're afraid to be alone. His face dropped. I never wanted you to feel like that. Well, I do. He nodded slowly. Then he left. There was no dramatic goodbye. No kiss. No final embrace. Just the sound of the front door closing. And then silence. For the first time in years, I was alone. It hurt. But there was something else underneath the pain. Relief. I started rebuilding my routine. Work. Gym. Dinner with friends I'd neglected during the first months of marriage. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. Stopped wondering what James was doing. Stopped replaying every argument. Or at least I tried. About a month later, I was having drinks with my friend Olivia when she suddenly got quiet. Too quiet. I noticed immediately. What? She shook her head. Nothing. Olivia. She sighed. I don't know if I should tell you. My stomach tightened. Tell me what? She looked uncomfortable. I saw James. I forced myself to stay calm. Okay? He wasn't alone. There it was. I looked down at my drink. With who? A woman. I waited. Olivia studied my face. They looked close. How close? Not friendly. I leaned back in my chair. It hurt more than I wanted it to. Even though we'd separated. Even though I knew we were ending. Still, it felt fast. Too fast. Then Olivia added, I think I know who she is. That got my attention. Who? She hesitated. Claire. The name hit me immediately. Claire. I had heard that name before. Years ago. Before James and I got serious. She had been someone from his past. Not officially an ex, according to him. Something complicated. Something unfinished. I remembered once asking James if he'd ever been in love before me. He'd laughed. Not really. Then, after a pause, he'd mentioned Claire. They'd dated casually. Stopped. Started talking again. Stopped again. It had never become serious. At least that was the version I'd been given. Are you sure? Olivia nodded. Pretty sure. Suddenly, every strange moment from those final weeks returned. The phone. The typing. The locked screen. That smile. You don't know her. Her. I felt sick. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about timing. Had James reconnected with Claire after we separated? Or before? The next morning, I sent him a message. We need to talk. He replied 15 minutes later. About what? I stared at the screen. Claire. The typing bubble appeared. Disappeared. appeared again. Then finally, okay. We met that afternoon at a small park near downtown. James was already sitting on a bench when I arrived. He looked nervous. That told me everything before he even opened his mouth. I stopped in front of him. Are you seeing Claire? He looked down, then nodded. Yes. I felt something crack inside me. When did it start? Dawn. When? He rubbed his hands together. We started talking again before you and I officially separated. There it was. I felt the blood rush to my face. How long before? A few weeks. I stared at him. A few weeks. It wasn't physical. I laughed once. Of course. It wasn't. So while I was lying awake trying to figure out whether our marriage was falling apart, you were reconnecting with the woman you wanted before me? James stood. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I was confused. You keep using that word like it excuses everything. I didn't plan it. People always say that when they don't want to admit they made a choice. He flinched. Good. For once, I wanted the words to land. James lowered his voice. Claire reached out first. And you answered. He looked away. Yes. You kept talking to her. Yes. While telling me you needed time. His silence answered again. I felt strangely calm. That was the part that surprised me most. I had imagined this moment would destroy me. Instead, it clarified everything. The marriage hadn't ended because James was confused. It ended because part of him had already started building an exit. You know what's funny? I said. James looked at me. You called me your last resort. His face tightened. And the entire time you were saying you didn't know what you wanted, you were checking to see if your first choice was still available. Dawn, that's not fair. No, it's accurate. He stepped closer. I never wanted to hurt you. Stop saying that. He froze. You keep acting like hurting me was an accident. It wasn't. Maybe you didn't plan the outcome, but you made every decision that got us here. He looked shattered. But I was done carrying that for him. I want the divorce paperwork finished. Dawn, no more coffee, no more talks, no more closure. If it's about paperwork, text me. Otherwise, don't. His eyes filled with tears. So that's it? I looked at him. Yes. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. For the next few weeks, James stayed out of my life. The paperwork moved forward. I started feeling normal again. Then one evening, while I was cooking dinner, my phone buzzed on the counter. James? I almost ignored it. Then I saw the message. Can we talk? I didn't answer. Another message came. Please, Dawn. It's important. I stared at the screen. For a second, I considered blocking him. Then a third message appeared. Claire cheated on me. And suddenly, I understood why James had come back. I stared at James's message for a long time. Claire cheated on me. A month earlier, those words might have given me some twisted sense of satisfaction. Instead, I felt almost nothing. Then another message appeared. Please. I just need to talk to you once. I should have ignored him. But part of me wanted to hear what could possibly make the man who had called me his last resort come running back now. So I agreed. We met the next afternoon at a coffee shop across town. James was already there. The second I saw him, I knew something had gone badly wrong. His eyes were red. His hair looked like he'd barely bothered with it. The coffee in front of him hadn't been touched. I sat across from him. What happened? James swallowed. Claire was seeing someone else. I said nothing. He looked down at his hands. Apparently, the whole time. The whole time you were together? He nodded. I found messages. She kept telling me he was just a friend. Then I confronted her, and she admitted it. The irony was almost painful. James had hidden Claire from me. Claire had hidden another man from James. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he laughed bitterly. I guess I deserved that. I didn't disagree. James looked up at me. I was wrong, Dawn. About Claire? About everything. I felt my stomach tighten. He leaned forward. When I left, I thought I was finally choosing what I really wanted. I convinced myself Claire was the person I'd missed out on. There it was. The truth he'd spent months avoiding. I had been right. Claire wasn't random. She was the woman he'd been comparing me to. And now? I asked. His eyes filled with tears. Now I realize I threw away the best thing I ever had. I looked at him. You mean me? Yes. He reached across the table. I moved my hand before he could touch it. His face crumpled. Dawn, please. No. Just hear me out. I am hearing you. He took a shaky breath. I know I hurt you. I know I handled everything wrong. But these past few weeks made me realize how much I miss our life. I miss coming home to you. I miss talking to you. I miss waking up next to you. I stared at him. You didn't miss those things when Claire wanted you. He froze. That's not fair. I almost smiled. You really need to stop saying that every time the truth makes you uncomfortable. James lowered his eyes. I made a mistake. No, James. You made choices. He looked back at me. You told your friend you settled for me. You questioned our marriage. You secretly started talking to Claire. Then you left and immediately got together with her. His voice broke. I know. And now she cheated on you. He nodded. And suddenly, I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. James wiped his eyes. I know how that sounds. Do you? Yes. I leaned back. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you want me to be your last resort again. That landed. His face went completely still. For several seconds, he couldn't answer. Then he whispered, That's not what this is. Then answer one question. He nodded. If Claire hadn't cheated on you, would you be sitting here right now? Silence. James opened his mouth. Closed it. His eyes dropped to the table. That was all the answer I needed. I picked up my bag. Dawn. Wait. I stood. He stood too. Please. I can fix this. No, you can't. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever you want. I'll prove it. I shook my head. You shouldn't need another woman to break your heart before realizing your wife mattered. Tears rolled down his face. I still love you. Maybe he did. But I finally understood something. Love wasn't the problem. Choice was. James had loved me when it was convenient, doubted me when Claire returned, and wanted me again when Claire rejected him. I wasn't going to build my life around someone else's uncertainty. Our divorce is almost finished, I said. Let's keep it that way. His face collapsed. Is there really no chance? No. Dawn. I hope you figure out what you actually want someday, James. He stared at me. But it won't be me waiting while you do it. I turned toward the door. Behind me, I heard him say my name once more. I didn't stop. Outside, the afternoon air felt colder than I'd expected. I stood on the sidewalk for a second, waiting for the pain to hit. It didn't. What came instead was relief. A few days later, James signed the remaining divorce papers without arguing. Olivia later told me Claire's relationship with the other guy didn't last either. Apparently, he'd had another girlfriend too. The whole thing collapsed almost as quickly as it had started. James tried contacting me twice after that. I didn't respond. Eventually, the messages stopped. Months passed. I threw myself into work, reconnected with friends, and rebuilt the parts of my life I'd allowed to shrink during my marriage. Some nights were still difficult. Sometimes I'd remember our wedding. Sometimes I'd remember how sincere James looked when he promised forever. But I stopped asking whether those moments had been fake. Maybe they hadn't been. Maybe James had loved me as much as he was capable of loving someone at that point in his life. It just wasn't enough for me anymore. The strangest part was that I used to think being his last resort was the most humiliating thing that could happen to me. It wasn't. The humiliating thing would have been taking him back after he proved it twice. James once believed he had settled for me. Then he lost me chasing the woman he thought he'd missed. And when she treated him exactly the way he'd treated me, he finally understood what he'd thrown away. By then, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't hoping karma would punish him. It already had. Because James finally decided I was his first choice. Only after I had decided he wasn't mine.